G'day, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. Today I thought I'd help out first homeowners a bit. I know people when they're trying to first get into the market find it really tough to be able to afford a property and to buy their first home, and they always feel like it's probably never going to happen for them. So I thought I'd have a bit of a chat to them about ways that you can look and get into the property market, and just let you know it's not impossible to actually do that. So first thing, the caveat about this though, it is for people in Adelaide. So if you're in Sydney, then I have no idea how you're going to be able to afford a home in Sydney. So, but people in Adelaide, you've definitely got a chance, and don't feel like it's impossible. So the first thing to understand, the median house price, so that basically means the middle house prices that sell for, which is similar to the average, I suppose, but slightly different. Hey, John, thanks for joining, is around about just over $400,000 in Adelaide. So the thing to understand, if it's your first home, you're just starting out. So you probably wouldn't expect to be able to buy the same as someone else that had, say 20 or 30 years experience on top of you. So understand that your house may not be as good as other people's house as far as might be the location or the size of the block, or something in particular might not be so good. So just understand if you compromise your expectations a bit to say, hey, well, maybe if the median house price is just over $400,000, then maybe what if I try to find a house which is about $350,000, which, it's not that far off, and you can get a house in a relatively nice location, relatively close to the city. And what I'm actually proposing is you maybe look at even buying a block of land and building a house. The reason why I think that's a good idea, particularly when you're first starting out, is there's a couple of reasons. So the first thing is the government really wants you to build a house. So they're putting a lot of incentives to try and get people to build, because what that does is that increases the supply of properties on the market. So that really helps out, keeping prices lower than they otherwise would be. And also what it does helps out the building industry, because the building industry are not going too well at the moment. So obviously anything that the government can do to help them out is, I'm sure will be welcomed by the building industry. So basically, you get the first homeowners grant. You get $15,000 if you build a house. So basically, you're going to buy a block of land and build a house, and then you get $15,000 from the government. You think about that, $15,000 is a crazy amount of money. If you try and save that yourself, that might take you years to be able to save $15,000. So the government are giving to you that for free. So my advice, if you are a first home buyer, definitely look at the option of trying to build a house and get 15 grand for free. Like, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't, really. 15 grand is 15 grand. So the other reason why it's good to be able to build a house is the fact that you save some money on stamp duty. So ordinarily, if you were to buy a property for, say, $350,000, you'd pay stamp duty in that full amount of $350,000. So in Adelaide, roughly you sort of say it's around about 5% of the purchase price. So it's around about, 17 grand or so. So if you buy a block of land and build those, the stamp duty is only on the land portion of it, not on the house portion of it. So let's say the block of land was, say, 170, and that the build portion was 180, then you pay stamp duty on the land portion of it. So you're only paying stamp duty on the $170,000 rather than, say, $350,000 on the full house. So that might equate to almost half the amount of stamp duty you otherwise would pay. So straight away, you got 15 grand from the government. You got some money in stamp duty as well. So save some money in stamp duty. So that's extra money in your pocket that you can do for other things. The other thing to understand too is when developers are knocking a house down and subdividing or selling you off blocks of land, generally you're always going to find blocks of land and land plus the house, so a house and land package. So the not built house essentially is always cheaper than a built house. And the reason that is if you got a chance, if you're not a first home buyer and you're trying to get the free money thing, but if you're just an average Joe building, deciding whether you buy a built house or a not built house, if they're the same price, you're probably going to sway towards the built house, because you can walk inside and have a look at it. And, I suppose it's considered less risky. It's just a bit less hassle than building, I suppose. So, whereas if you go through that little bit more effort and you do go to the decision that you're going to build a house, then the developer has to give you an incentive to go through that hassle of building a house. And so I describe that as like a developer's discount. And I know what I said about the $15,000 from the government's really good. And, you might save, say $10,000 on stamp duty or whatever it happens to be. So, that's sort of 25 grand, you're already ahead. But in reality, the developer's discount is probably where you're most going to save, the bulk of your money, really. So it really depends on the market, though, depending on how much of an incentive the developer has to try and convince you to buy build. Sometimes people, it's really hard. People, depending on the market, the economics, I suppose, some people don't want to build. And so the developer has to try a lot harder. So in that case, it would discount the price of the not built house compared to the built house. And sometimes it's, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 cheaper than a built house. So you can see straight away, you might have $30,000, $40,000 in equity. Like, it's cheaper than a built one straight away you've got in your pocket. So that just, again, that's more money that you would otherwise have to save, or more money in your pocket to do other things with, basically. So you got 15 grand from the government, you got some money from the stamp duty, you also got 30, 40 grand from this developer's discount. And then on top of that, you've got a brand new house. Quite often when you buy an existing house, you've got repairs to be made because, they're old and a bit worn out. And so you've got to get and put new carpet, and you've got to paint it, and you've got to do the landscaping and a whole pile of extra things. Brand new house, it's just done. You just move in and that's it. There's nothing else for you to pay for. Because the thing to understand, when you're borrowing money from the bank, you might borrow 90 or 95 or whatever percent for the loan. That means you only have to kick in 5% or 10% towards the purchase. So the thing to understand, if you buy a house that's already done, then you're only kicking in, if you say you're borrowing 90%, you're only kicking in 10% of the cost of that house. Whereas if you buy a house and you kick in 10% of the cost of the house, and then you go and finish it off, you do the carpet, to the landscaping or the air conditioning, or you do some painting or whatever, you're paying 100% of that cost. And so let's say the cost of the renovation is 10 grand, you're paying 100% of that 10 grand. Whereas if you were to buy a house that was already renovated or already brand new, where you didn't have to spend any money on that extra 10 grand, you're only putting in 10% of that. So you're only putting in $1,000 to give you $10,000 worth of value. So hopefully you can understand why that works out so much better for you when you're starting out, because you've got so much less cash. So the more money the bank puts in, the better, basically. So, and on top of that, you've got a brand new house. So you've got a warranty on the house. So if anything goes wrong, you can ring out the builder and get it fixed. Rather than an old house, if the whole buyer beware thing. If you buy a house and the next day the hot water service breaks or the air conditioner breaks down or something else goes wrong, then it's just too bad. You've just got to fork out the money to get it fixed. Whereas if you move into a brand new house and something breaks, then you just ring up the builder and get it fixed. So, and depending on what item of the house is, you might have a 30-year warranty on the structure of the house, or, it might be a year on a oven or something, or it might be a 5-year, what they call a statutory warranty. That covers you to make sure the builder's done everything they're supposed to have done along the way. So, so there's a whole pile of different warranties at different parts of the house. Whereas you buy an old house, you got no warranty on the house, basically. If anything goes wrong, then it's just too bad, and you just got to get it fixed. So you can see now you've got, the free money from the government, 15 grand. You get saved some money on stamp duty, which may, 5 or 10 or 15 grand. You get the developer's discount, which might be 30, 40, 50 grand. You get a brand new house, so you're not having to worry about maintenance. You've got a warranty on the house, so if something goes wrong, you can get it fixed up. So you can see how financially it's almost a no-brainer. And the next thing is, there's, I don't know if you know, but I've got a mortgage broking company too, so I have a pretty good understanding of the finance side of things. Particularly in South Australia, we've got some loan products in Adelaide where the government's actually supported some of the lenders to be able to actually help people out and get them into the market. And so what they actually do is they'll actually allow you to borrow borrow more than you otherwise would be able to borrow, and also have actually less savings than you otherwise would need to. So essentially what that means is you only really need about $3,000 in what they call genuine savings. So essentially, if you've got a job and you can put away $100 a week for 30 weeks, so it's just over 6 months. If you can put that aside, then that's $3,000 deposit that you've just saved up, and that's going to go towards a brand new $350,000 house, which could be 20 minutes, half an hour outside of the city. So it's it's pretty amazing that in such a short amount of time. The only downside of this thing is when you calculate it based on a $350,000 house, you do need around about $20,000 in savings, or what they call contribution, the amount you're putting towards the purchase. But you only actually need $3,000 of genuine savings. So you only actually need to show you've actually saved $3,000, putting aside $100 a week. The other $17,000, that can come from anywhere. And so my advice to you, if you're just starting out, you can see all the benefits from building and all these extra savings you're going to make by building. So my advice to you is just try and find someone that can help you out. That might be your parents or your grandparents or your friends or somebody else that's going to be able to cover you for that $17,000, then they can come in as what's called a guarantor, someone that's going to help you through the process and say, hey, I'll back this person to be able to buy this property. Because the cool thing about this, if you're buying a property that's undervalued, essentially, because you're buying a block of land and building, because essentially you've got 15 grand for the government, you've got all these stamp duty savings, you've got all the, the developer's discount, which means it's essentially undervalued anyway, compared to what it would cost you otherwise. By the time the house is built, you've got equity in the property straight away. So what that means is quite quickly, you can really focus on starting to pay down your debt, the debt as quickly as you possibly can. Remembering you're not going to be paying interest anymore on rent anymore on your wherever you're renting, and so what that's going to mean is you can start focusing all your energy on trying to pay down that debt relatively quickly, but you also got this equity already sitting in the property. And so the benefit of this is then you can go back to that person that's lent you the $17,000 and say, hey, I tell you what, I'm going to pay you back now because I've built up what's called equity, or you've got some extra value in that property, and you can go back to another bank and refinance and pull out some of that equity and go back to that person and say, hey, here you go, I'm repaying that money that you're nice enough to lend me, a year or 2 or 5 years down the track. So, and you can imagine if you're a parent or you're a grandparent or you're, even just you're an auntie or someone that's just trying to help out a young person trying to get into the market, for the sake of $17,000. And I know it sounds like a lot of money, but in reality, you don't actually have to fork out cash. You can actually supply some equity within your property. Like, you might have a property you've sort of paid down. You only owe half the amount on it, or you paid it all off totally. So you can actually really help someone out by, refinancing your house or acting that as a bit of guarantee towards the purchase as well. And you don't even actually have to do anything, and really you're just backing that person to say, hey, I trust you to repay me, and I trust you to, do the right thing. And, because I can see how much benefit you're going to get out of it. And I can see how, you're buying it at a discount anyway. So it's going to work out so much better for you. And I know you're going to be able to pay me back because I can see the equity you've got sitting in the property. So hopefully that's made sense. And hopefully people now can see, if you're a first home buyer, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is definitely a chance for you to be able to afford your own home. And, to be honest, it's going to be a brand new home as well. You said, don't even have to start with some crappy old house that's fallen down around you. You can move into a brand new home relatively close to the city, and it's only going to be costing you, all you have to do is save up $100 a week for just over 6 months, and you're on your way. So if you like what I had to say, click on the like button. If you haven't liked it, still click on the like button because I really appreciate it. And if you know someone that's really struggling, or they haven't bought their first home yet, then maybe click on the share button, or put a comment box with their name on there. I'm sure they can watch this, and hopefully that gives them some hope, and hopefully they can see that it's definitely a possibility for them and for lots of people out there to be able to afford their first home. So, well, if you've got something you'd like me to talk about in the future episode, then put a comment in the comment box, and I'd love to answer any questions you may have about property. Thanks, guys.